In the beginning, there was one wave of figures. But, like most awesome hobbies, Star Wars exploded. And over the last 40 years, we've gotten more Star Wars figures than, well, we probably need. For those of us obsessed with these little 3 3/4 pieces of plastic crack, well, getting a complete collection is a amazing accomplishment and something a lot of us pride ourselves on. We all have our way of collecting. For me, it tends to be the original trilogy in 3 3/4 as a scale, but with so many different scales and characters, source materials to pull from. Hey, the joy of collecting Star Wars and comparing figures in different versions to previous ones that came out is all part of the hobby. Now, while my main goal has been to collect the original 92 or 96 or 120, however you want to do your math, and have modern versions, well, I want to have every original trilogy figure. And I've made quite a few videos on figures that haven't come out, like spotlighting the Cantina and aliens that haven't actually been made in plastic yet. Now, for years, I've kind of tracked my own personal collection with my notebook, where I write down with want lists of figures that I hope will come out one day, sort of wish lists, as well as kind of lists of characters that haven't even been announced that I just want to see made. So for Star Wars in particular, I've kept a list for years, and as figures come out from this list, I cross them off, or we'll put a check mark. As an example, a good old ice cream maker man was on my list, and when an action figure came out, of Wilro Hood, well, hey, cross him off my list. It's as simple as that. It's basically been a fun way of, I guess, sort of tracking the collection, as the fact that Star Wars has gone so deep has been a big part of the fun, I guess, of the hobby. Mosep, another character that I really wanted, and when he finally showed up, boom. All right, so using him as a jumping off point, let's look at some characters that I personally want that have never been made as Star Wars toys. So I've mentioned in a few videos I'm a big fan of Mos Eisley Cantina, especially the characters that were there on set. As an example, this character, Salo Mal, who's also has a counterpart known as the Colonel. There were two of them. They were kind of the mousy-ish aliens with big bellies and big butts. They are seen in the film, both Mos Eisley in the streets, they show up in the holiday special, and they do show up in the Cantina. Granted, all of the characters that were on set were kind of pushed to the background because George Lucas didn't like the way the masks look, which is why all the inset shots were done with new masks and new characters after the fact. So all of these characters in the background in the Cantina that were actually on the set during the shoot have kind of a special place. And this is one of the few that has never been made as a figure. And it's a twofer, because you can get two characters with the one body, right? You do this sort of fat, big butt body. All right, continuing with our look at the Cantina, obviously it has spawned lots of figures, and one of them, Snaggletooth, a Snivian, as well as Zutton here, who's in the holiday special. Well, there's another Snivian that's never been made, and that's this guy from Jabba's sail barge. So he's hanging out behind 3PO and I think Yak Face. So a great figure to get. The Imperial Dignitary Simu. All right, obviously he was going to be on the list. So there's quite a few Munchkin-looking Imperial dignitaries in Return of the Jedi. Only one of them had a figure in the original line, and that's the tall guy with the tall hat. So the purple one here, not the green A-Wing pilot. So this is the only figure that was made in the original line that's never been released in the modern one. For years, Hasbro said that these two Imperial dignitaries that they did during the Gold Saga, that's a good word, Scott, there we go. These two Imperial dignitaries crossed that one off, but fans were quick to point out that no, it's not the same guy. So we need this one. We need Simu. Make him happen, Hasbro. That's the only figure that's never gotten a redo. Now, speaking of Imperials, another character that could do for a great redo is the black outfitted Imperial officer. So we've obviously had many Imperial officers in many different colored outfits: white, gray, greenish gray, grayish gray. That's not even a word. Blurch? Let's just call it blurch. All right, so most officers are wearing blurch, but there are officers in black, and we've gotten a few different sculpts. The most recognizable being this one with the super I don't have an iron in my wardrobe because I'm so wrinkly. We did get a less wrinkly version in this Kmart special action figure set, but it wasn't a specific Imperial officer. And with all of the specific officers we've gotten, I'd love to get Officer Prodigy, who's the one who first tells Vader that the Death Star plans are not in the main computer. It'd also be great to get this commander, the one who says, our first catch of the day. So I'm really big on Imperial officers that have actual lines, and getting all of them, like Captain Nita, would be great. On the Rebel side, we've gotten most of the generals. Dodona here came out years ago, and I was so glad we were finally getting Yavin generals. But we could still get a different version of him that he wears in the actual photo on that card. Yep, when they're in the briefing room. And that body could be used for other officers, like Bob here. Yes, this character's name is actually Bob, with the mutton chops and the giant mustache. He appears both in the briefing room and in the ceremony, and right behind R2 there. So I would love to get that figure. Not going to happen. In his will, he said he doesn't want a figure made. All right, let's go over to Endor. So we've had a lot of Endor troopers over the years, and lots of different versions, because there are quite a few different versions. It's not like stormtroopers in the Empire where everyone wears the same exact armor. So the figure or the character that is on Han's left there, that is the particular Endor trooper that I want. Why that one? Well, that one was the version that was the model or the base for the Kenner figure from the 80s. And we've never gotten this exact figure in the modern line. We got it close in Power of the Force 2, but not exactly. The Tonica sisters, that's a whole other issue. So as much as I really want these figures, these characters, some of the only females shown in the Cantina, I did a whole video about why they'll never be figures, and essentially the actress that played one of the Tonica sisters kind of shot herself in the foot asking for money based on likeness rights, and instead Hasbro said, well, you know what, instead we're just never going to make these. So yeah, if she probably hadn't spoken up and asked for money for likeness rights, we'd probably have a Tonica figure, but it's much easier just to say no. We're not leaving the Cantina yet, because there's a couple other characters that are on my personal list, and the Duros, which kind of look like the X-Files gray aliens, except that they have green skin, but that whole big head, big eyes thing. We've had this guy a couple times in a couple different scales, Elorus Maddock. He actually won a Fan's Choice contest. But we've never had his partner. Is it Boris or Boris, I think is the guy in the gray there, tan, the Blurch color. So yeah, and great staple Cantina alien that has a awesome shot, never made. Same with this guy, Fly Guy. Well, I think his name is like Buzz or something like that. I don't know. But he falls in that same category as Solomon and the Colonel, that they were characters that were actually on set, which is why they show up in things like the Marvel Comics adaptation, because that was done with the on-set photography, not the after-the-fact pickup shots. So once again, one of the very few aliens in the Cantina that was there on set in the movie, but still no action figure of this guy. Tizik, I think that's his name, like T-Z-Z-Z-K or something. It's like a bug noise. I don't know. Go look it up. That's what Wikipedia is for. All right. I promise I will get out of the Cantina, but before I do, we should probably talk about Rodians. Now everyone knows Greedo's in the Cantina. He's got dialogue, and he's had tons of action figures over the years. But there's more than one Rodian in the Cantina. In fact, there are 3 of them. Greedo is the one who has the most screen time, obviously, and it's clear which one he is, but they all look identical. They all wear the same outfit. And while we've had many action figures called Greedo, we've never had one of any of the other Rodians that are in the Cantina. So this guy here, who pans over and looks at the camera, that's not Greedo. This is a Rodian sitting on the other side of the Cantina. They were actually called Martians in the script, and they even had a remake because the original mask George felt wasn't alien enough, which he probably was right. These Greedo Rodians also show up in the Docking Bay 94 scene. The difference between Greedo and not Greedo is that not Greedo has a holster, whereas Greedo does not. Now, we've had action figures of Greedo without a holster, that is Greedo, but we've also had action figures called Greedo that do come with a holster. This is not Greedo. So technically, we have had this figure, it's just been called Greedo. This exact figure could be re-released and just be a generic Rodian. All right, I said I was going to get out of the Cantina, but one last look, and that's because, well, as I've made a couple videos, there are a ton of background humans that are in the Cantina. In fact, there's more humans than there are aliens. The one on the bottom right there, Mig, I think Ural Mig is his name. That's the one human that I would love. I don't know. I just think he's looks like that 1970s kind of badass, and he would make a cool-looking human figure. Yeah, getting generic humans in the cantina are probably not going to be on Hasbro's wish list to put out. Now, major characters like Han Solo should be, and you'd think that we would have at this point had every single version of major characters like Han Solo. But one version that has, well, been neglected to our collection is the Ewok Banquet. We got an R2-D2 version of this, right, where he's tied up in the cargo net on the little sticks. But we've never gotten Han and Luke tied up to poles with maybe torch accessories and Ewoks trying to cook them. Hey, it's a variant. What about the major leaders of the rebellion? There's one that has huge credit in the movie, but no figure. And that's this guy here. Now, you may be like, I don't even know who that is. Well, that is the rebel officer when Leia first arrives, and he says that, we feared the worst for you when we heard about Alderaan. This is Commander Willard. And what's interesting about him is that he has top billing in A New Hope, right next to Chewbacca and the droids. So he was played by Eddie Byrne. And so Jack Purvis was the head Jawa, and David Prowse was Vader. So it's crazy that he gets credit right along with C-3PO, the droids, Vader, and the head Ewok head Jawa. So who knows? But for that reason alone, I think that Commander Willard needs a figure, because apparently he's the star of Star Wars, despite only having 2 lines. Hey, stranger things have happened. All right, so that's my list of wants. Anyone that you've just always wanted, not on my list, I'd love to know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for sharing. It's the best way to support this channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.